Now for global business updates, Rotus Odiri joins us. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Dr. Abati. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Ayo. Good morning to all our viewers out there. And what a Monday. We've got some breaking news just coming in from France. Sébastien Lecornu has resigned. I mean, we've extensively covered the French political backdrop, and with everything that's been going on, he was just appointed in literally last month, 5th Prime Minister in about 2 years over in France. And apparently there was a deadlock over the weekend with respect to trying to get the budget over the line. They got a lot of pushback from the left-wing parties there. And I think it's also because they were trying, the government he was trying to put together, finance minister and so on, he's also trying to bring in people that Macron had touched on in the past. So the deadlock bonds have widened. The spread between French 30-year bonds and bunds over in Germany have widened, because Germany is the benchmark that you use to check how well these other bonds are doing. Markets, the CAC 40, the French index is down about 2% this morning. French banks are falling. So it's just more, chaos over in France. And we're seeing that, filter over into gold. So there you have it. Emmanuel Macron, either he's going to have to call snap elections, or the pressure is just on in France. So this is just coming in a few minutes ago. Over to what to watch this week. You've got expecting a new offer of the Nigeria federal government savings bond for October to be put forward today from the Debt Management Office. I think for September 15, the 2 year was at 15%. The 3, I think about 16%. Then OpenAI, it's having its 3rd development day. We're going to hear from Sam Altman. OpenAI is just doing everything, making all the headlines. Rufai last week was talking about how they could hit 1 trillion. A lot of people have been talking about that in terms of the valuation of the company. Tuesday, Amazon is having its Prime Day, but also Walmart and I understand Target are also having their own sales days as well. So it's a big day for retail sales in order to compete with Amazon. We got the Federal Reserve minutes from the last meeting where they cut rates by 25 basis points. Maybe get some more insights there from the Federal Reserve. Thursday, we got earnings from Pepsi in the consumer goods sector, Delta Airlines in aviation, and then Levi's in apparel. And I mean, again, we all remember there was no non-farm payrolls from the United States last week. Also no job listings, and we still have that political deadlock between Democrats and the Republicans. And that is actually, as I mentioned with gold, gold now has touched $3,934 an ounce. This thing is, it's going to, touch 4,000 at some point. The political deadlock in the United States, this news we're getting in from France, these are filtering into the gold price that we've seen. Investors are just piling in there because debt is now an issue, and Bitcoin as well. In fact, Bitcoin touched a new high of 125,000, I think, on Sunday, but then it's pulled back just a bit. It's at 123,973. Of course, exchange traded fund interest from institutional investors. The policy environment, also U.S. equities rising as well. That has also filtered into Bitcoin climbing. And also, I think the big news, of course, is Japan with the before I get to Japan, oil. I have to talk about oil. OPEC Plus has announced that they will, on Sunday, yesterday, that they will be increasing their output November output by 137 barrels per day. We've got a chart here looking at when they started their increases in output. So it was let's go back to that prior chart. It was 138,000 barrels per day. They will increase output in April. Then May, June, July was 411,000. They now rose to 548,000 in August, 547 in September, and then brought it back down to 137. We understand that Saudi Arabia wanted a larger increase because they want to be able to get their market share. They've got spare capacity and they want to punish U.S. shale producers. But we understand that Russia wanted to keep things more modest because they, of course, are being hit by sanctions and they don't want oil prices to fall too fast. So there's a worry of a supply glut in the latter parts of this year. And so that's the reason why they decided decided, okay, let's keep it at 137. Oil has been volatile. I mean, it's been, if you look at this chart here from September all the way through to October, I think it's trading at about 61 or 62 or so this morning. But because of these fears of a supply glut, you've seen oil pretty muted in the 60s, in the 60 level, and that's where we're expecting that it's going to close as the year goes. I mean, for Nigeria and other oil producing countries, that's a worry. But you see Nigeria actually trying to increase its non-oil exports with where the exchange rate is. So that's oil. I think now, yeah, the big story, I think you already touched on this with Adefemi, with Sanae Takachi, who was the runner-up to Shigeru Ishiba at the last leadership elections that we had in Japan in August of last year. And I remember we covered this when we looked at the 7 finalists. So she, of course, if more than likely with her emerging as the new leader of the Liberal Democrats, will most likely become the next Prime Minister of Japan and the first female Prime Minister. She's apparently a pretty hard right in terms of her views. But we hear she's a fan of Margaret Thatcher, also a heavy metal fan and likes drumming. But as far as her ideological leanings are concerned, this is what the markets have been looking at. She is a nationalist. She has talked about curbing immigration. If you take a look at her ideological leanings, she's talked about curbing immigration in Japan. The Liberal Democratic Party is trying to shift to the right. We talked about the election results. But interestingly enough, she's a pro-stimulus conservative. And when we think about it, I remember Rufai was talking about how we lack ideological parties here in Nigeria last week. And I noted that because with conservatives, they usually want smaller government and less spending, but she believes in stimulus. She wants to, give more tax headroom to citizens. Economics, exactly. And she's also criticized the Bank of Japan in the past. In fact, in the last election cycle, this dovish monetary policy stance, she called the Bank of Japan stupid for raising rates, but she's dialed that back in this election cycle. She doesn't want to really upset markets. I think she now knows that she's likely going to be the next Prime Minister, and she's a China hawk. She has called for a closer relationship with Taiwan, which the Chinese don't actually like. And we know Donald Trump is going to be in Japan in about 3 or 4 weeks or so. So she's going to be talking about. She said she won't reverse the trade deal that they have. So she's got a lot on her plate. Now, with respect to how the markets have reacted, the Japanese Nikkei 225, China's on a holiday, South Korea's on a holiday. The Nikkei 225 hit a new high this morning because with her dovish leanings, they expect that perhaps that will mean the Bank of Japan could, perhaps not raise rates as aggressively as expected. There's something called yen swaps, which are derivatives that were trading Friday and Monday. They saw a 61% chance of a rate hike at the next Bank of Japan meeting. They now reduced to 41% after her win. The topics at a high. She's a big believer in defense. Donald Trump has been calling for Asia to spend more money defending itself. And after her win, this is Kawasaki Heavy Industry Limited and Mitsubishi Heavy Industry Limited. I checked earlier in the morning. Kawasaki was up as much as 13%. It came down a little bit to 9%. Mitsubishi at about 11%. That was up as much as 15%. So defense stocks in Japan rallied. Real estate stocks in Japan have rallied. The yen did weaken as well. And Japanese long-dated bonds, especially the 20 and 30-year bonds, those also saw some weakness because and Rufai was talking about this before we came on air, with all this spending that she wants to do, that is going to impact, Japan's debt. They have the largest debt to GDP on planet Earth, about 250% to GDP. So there's a lot going on. This is the big story with respect to, international relations with the US, Japanese equities, bonds, and everything else. And of course, the historical nature of likely having your first female prime minister over in Japan. That's our updates for today.
All right, thank you very much, Rotus. So unfortunately, we don't have time to dig deeper into the stories, but thank you. We look forward to more tomorrow on the show.